Builds. We know them, we love them. They are the janky, unstable assemblies that show off the development progress of Stalker and how it evolved from a Quake-like shooter to the amazing, dark, and atmospheric game we know today. Most of these builds were never meant to be seen by the general public, but many leaks have happened throughout the years that have led them to being released into the wild west that is the internet, allowing us to peer into the long and arduous grind that was the development of the Stalker series we know today. There are many builds. Some are wildly different to one another, while others are mere evolutions of the previous one. But they all have something in common. They offer us the rare opportunity to watch our favorite game evolve in real time right before our eyes. So get ready, Stalker, and follow me as I take you deep into the build loop. Hi everyone, it's S.T.A.L.K.E.R, God's most unmedicated schizo fighting his most deranged battles, and welcome to another episode of Buildo. However, I'm gonna be upfront about this one. This episode is not going to be the most insightful or entertaining. This is because, you see, I try to cover 6 builds per episode. And sadly, the 6 builds that I'm about to cover today are extremely similar to one another. So because of this, there isn't really any mind-blowing things to show. But alas, I have to cover these builds or else I would be failing my mission to archive them. So to be honest, this is practically a filler episode. Like, this is the anime beach episode of the Buildo series, for real, no cap. So I'm sorry if this episode is not the most interesting, but I'll try my best to make it entertaining. Oh, also, if you follow builds like I do, you might notice that I skipped over some of them. This is intentional. There are some builds out there that are called patch builds, quote unquote. These builds don't actually have anything different. They are the exact same as the build that came before. They're just a patch for the build, so they don't really add anything for me to show. However, I will cover them in the final episode known as the Buildo Roundup, which I will kind of like collect all these miscellaneous builds and I'll give you like the TLDR about them basically. I am intentionally leaving it out because it just doesn't have enough, but I will show it later in the final episode. Enough of the end of disclaimer here, back to the video. Build 1154. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I have no idea when this build got leaked or who leaked it, because there's like 3 different sources that claim to be the leak. First, it was uploaded to the server of a now defunct Ukrainian file hosting server called Golden Bank. But at the same time, the build was also mentioned in some earlier threads on a now defunct website called GameStrike. But at the same time, it is also said that this build was published or distributed by a journalist that had received the build from GSC so that he could write, articles about it, and then later he would release it online. Overall, I have no clue where this build came from or how it got leaked. All I know is that it got leaked. That's it. There's 3 different sources and I can't verify a single one of them. And here we are, 1154. And you might notice that this is cordon, and it's not much different from the one in 1114. The only real difference is that now the trees have foliage, and this green grass here is actually from the Aztec builds, you know, think of like 1196 for example. But besides that, it's pretty much cordon, although there are some changes to the structures. Here, if you remember last time in 1114 I showed you the missing village, well, in this one you can actually find it. We're also about to meet the second big feature of this build, the enemies, more specifically the Spatnaz. And the Spatnaz at this time, they actually used the model for Jeffrey, you know, the playable character of 1096. And there's a few of them right up ahead. As you can see, they can do some pretty advanced movements, such as be able to go prone. They can even roll around the floor and whatnot. Pretty advanced for 2002. And now that we cleared them out, I can show you the village. This is the original second village, as I like to call it, because originally the cordon was supposed to have two villages, the Rookie village and this one right here, and there's also some couple of houses over there that I'll show you later. But as you can see, they have continued to develop the cordon level, adding more structures and whatnot. Now I'm gonna go here to the road and show you some of the new weapons. First here we have the Browning High Power. This one is in every single build. It's the exact same. But on the second slot we have the Makarov. On the third slot we have the Fort. On the fourth, we have the AK-74 as always. On the fifth, we have the FN. On 6, we got the LR-300 as always. And that's it. They removed the minigun in this one, so can't show that one. Although they did add, by pressing B, the binoculars. As you can see here, the patrolling AI for the soldiers. They're patrolling that little house there. Now I'm gonna go there and show it to you. Oh yeah, real quick here, as you can see the model is still the same, although they did change the way that you hold the rifles, the way that you hold the weapons, so that although it still looks really goofy with the pistols, at least it still, you know, fits the rifles, kinda. It still has a really goofy running animation though. Anyway, here we have the couple of houses, dead body on the floor, a little bit of fire showing some basic dynamic lighting. It's just 3 houses here, nothing big to show. And if you're wondering, the southern checkpoint and the northern checkpoint, they are practically the same, so I don't think I'll be showing them. Up next I'm gonna take you to the south here, and I'll show you the original Rookie village. But you know what, before we go to the Rookie village, Remember the factory? Yeah, it's not in that giant hill anymore. In fact, they didn't even move it from the hill. They just deleted the hill entirely and moved the factory to a lower elevation. And just like I said in the first episode, they also, took out that trash pile that was over there and replaced it with this little swamp. So the factory didn't change at all. It's the same factory that you know and love. They just moved it down, so I'm not gonna go there. You already know how it looks like. We also have a new map detail here in the form of this abandoned BTR. I don't know the model, but it's a BTR, that's for sure. And here we are, original Rookie Village. And just like the one in the finished game, it's the same idea, the same concept. This small village with a couple of houses. As I was saying, the idea is still the same one as the one from release. It's just a couple of houses, a few destroyed ones, with a bunch of basements. And in here, this right here is the original Sidorovich's bunker. This is where the trader was gonna be. Although this early in development he was not called Sidorovich, but instead Toad. Or even earlier than that, he was just known as Dealer. This is where he would sit and give you the first mission. And now we are on our way to the northern checkpoint, which has changed considerably compared to the last one. I checked, the northern checkpoint didn't change at all, like pretty much nothing, but the southern checkpoint, it actually has some differences, so I'm gonna show it to you. First we have the first minefield, signs, but there's no mine, so not yet at least. We still got the comically small roadblocks. But now the southern checkpoint is much bigger. We got a BTR, an abandoned car, some sort of little command room here, and the barracks for the soldiers, which for some reason are completely destroyed. I don't know what the intention here was, like what the map design intention was, but for some reason the barracks are completely destroyed. But this is it for the 1154 build, except for one more level, Agroprom. Because if you remember, Agroprom has already appeared in some earlier builds. But it was very unfinished, being only a square. But this new Agroprom that I'm gonna show you has been expanded considerably. And in fact, it's pretty much the same as the one on release. Like the original size that they chose for Agroprom, they kinda just kept it and didn't really change it much. So a quick cut here and I'll show you Agroprom. And here we are, the brand new Agroprom. You've probably already noticed how much larger it is, and also the different spawn point. Instead of spawning in the institute over there, we spawn at the gates. And as you can already tell, it's pretty similar to the one on release. It's still pretty identical to the Agroprom of release. And just like the Cordon, we have a bunch of soldiers walking around with some basic AI. here we have the first institute building. Pretty similar to the earlier ones, you know, from build 1114 and earlier. But of course, it's now been expanded. And the most important thing, they opened up the institute. So now you can actually go inside. And again, as you can see, Agroprom stayed extremely similar from the build phase to the release phase. Like, I gotta say, this is the map that they changed the least. Although one big difference from this one to the release is that they have yet to add the swamp area. So the swamp area here is not finished yet, just a bunch of trees. They haven't added the water or anything. Hell, they probably haven't even started on the swamp idea. So that's different, but later on in the coming builds, the swamp will already be done. And here we have the second institute, where the military is based off of. This is where you steal the documents in Shadow of Chernobyl. And again, just like the rest of the map, it really didn't change much from the build phase to the release. So, as I said, you can see it really didn't change much. Like, Agroprom is the level that changed the least throughout development. Like, the moment that they finish this right here, you know, the first institute and the second institute, the map pretty much stays the same. Like, it never got bigger or anything. The only addition was the swamp, and after that, nothing. Agroprom features in pretty much every single build we're gonna look today. So, for example, when I cover build 1230 and build 1254, I might skip Agroprom when covering them, unless they add something new. Because to be fair, Agroprom changed so little sometimes that showing it to you more than once is just unnecessary. And this is already a filler episode pretty much, so we don't need any more filler. But up next, I'm gonna show you a feature they added to this build for testing purposes. It's called the car level. Basically, they were starting the idea of introducing vehicles, drivable vehicles to Stalker. And they have two levels for testing them, which are basically just Cordon and Agroprom, but the difference is that you can drive around in a car. So I'm gonna show you that next. And after that, we can go to the next build. And here we are, the car level. As you can see, we're driving around the Niva, although saying we are driving it is kind of wrong, because we are the car. Like, there's no player model and you can't leave the car and walk around, so we are literally the car. I gotta say, it controls somewhat well. Obviously, this is very early in the game's life, but it controls somewhat okay. Like, when I first played this build, I thought the car would be terrible to control, but it's actually not that bad. And this is just standard cordon. It's the same thing that I showed you. The only difference is that this one doesn't have any soldiers. It's just for you to drive around in. Because early on in the original idea for Stalker, the maps would be gigantic, but to compensate for the massive size, the player would have access to vehicles, and they had many vehicles planned. They had cars, they had a BTR. I think at some point they wanted to add the helicopter, you know, the Hind, but all of that got cut. The cars, however, almost made it to release. Like, they stayed for a very long time. Like, they kept the cars in the game's files for a pretty long time. They really tried to make it work. But after the maps were redone to be smaller, the cars didn't really have any use anymore, so they got cut. One last thing I want to show you. You see, if you turn the car over, the developers added a little button to allow you to try and correct it. They call it the repair button, but it isn't really a repair because you're invincible. What it does is that it launches your car upwards in an attempt to put it upright again. However, nothing stops you from just pressing P over and over again to launch your car into the stratosphere, like this. And you can do this as long as you want. As long as you keep pressing P, it will keep going up. And of course, if you hold it down, this happens. Yeah, we can leave the fabric of reality and reach ascension into the heavens. Oh yeah, okay, I think that's enough for the car level. On to the next build. So this next build is gonna be a double feature. It's going to be 1230 and 1233. The reason that I'm putting the two of them together is because they are incredibly similar. Like, there's only one difference between 33 and 30, so there's no reason for me to, you know, make them two separate entries. Build 1230 was assembled for testing the game on NVIDIA video cards with the NV30 chip, while on the other hand, Build 1233 is almost exactly the same as Build 1230, except for the very first implementation of physics objects. And here we are, Build 1230. Normally I would have just shown you 1233 instead, but I for some reason could not get it to run. Like, I tried everything, but 1233 just refuses to open, so unfortunately I can't show you the physics, but hey, at least I can show you 1230. First big difference here, and probably the only one from the last build, is that your player model has been changed. So instead of that original Stalker model, you have this dude. It's basically the Stalker model with a different head. I have no idea what this head is supposed to be or if it's based on anyone, but they changed the model, and this model stays for the next, I think, like 3 builds. I think by 1465 they change it again. And just like the other builds, it's just Agroprom with some minor differences. As you can see, it has more grass, the skybox is better, the lighting is much better made, and the trees look different, but that's it, it's just Agroprom. One of the differences though is that you only have 2 weapons in this build, the FN2000 and the AK-74. And this whole build was pretty much made just to show off to gaming publications, so you know, gaming magazines and whatnot. Like, this was just for game journalists to take pictures with. And you can tell that because, I mean, look how nice the whole map looks, especially for 2003. If I'm not mistaken, this build was compiled in either 2003 or 2002. So for those years, this is a spectacular looking build, especially all this foliage. But there isn't really much to show, it's just Agroprom. It just looks nicer for a bunch of game journalists to take pictures of. Although they did change it a little bit, such as adding that hill, and also they removed the trees, so they are starting to change the map and open the way for the swamp. So at least there's that, you know, as a difference. But it really isn't that much different from the last build. It's just Agroprom, but it looks nicer. Here, as you can see, this is the beginning of the swamp, so this is different, but everything else stays the same. It's a very basic swamp, just some water and trash hanging around. Doesn't even have the trailer yet. But that's about it for new things in this build. Although there is one more level on this build called Road, which I'll show you later. It's a test map for the new and improved car controls. It has a bunch of ramps and speed bumps. You can drive around in the car with it. But besides that, it's a very simple build, just another version of Agroprom and a test map. Again, I wish that I could show you 1233 instead, because it has physics, but unfortunately I couldn't get it to run. It was running a couple of days ago, but for some reason when I turned on my PC today, it just refused to run. I don't know why that happens, but this is builds, okay? This is the builds we're talking about here. They are unstable as fuck, so some days they just don't feel like working. Sadly, today it didn't feel like working. So next up, I'll show you the roadmap, and after that we can move on to the next build, 1254, which unfortunately is not much different from this one.
Toyota Corolla, bonito como el sol y jala como un campeón. Tracción delantera, independiente suspensión. Toyota Corolla. Tremendo motor de larga duración. 4 cilindros, 1600. Toyota Corolla. Potencia sin restricción y suave su dirección. Es grande en economía, camina a millón. Toyota Corolla, el mejor carro del mundo entero. Ha llegado a Venezuela.
Build 1254. Now this one is a little interesting because I can't track down when it was first seen. You see, the Wikia page only says that it was demonstrated at some sort of exhibition in 2003, but I can't find which one. Like, was it the 2003 version of the European Computer Trade Show, or was it something else? I don't know. I can't find any sources on it. All I know is that this build was first shown to the public in some kind of exhibition in 2003. The only available level in this one is, once again, Agroprom. And look, I'm not gonna give you gameplay of this build because it's literally the exact same thing as 1233. Like, there's basically no difference. So instead of, you know, doing the exact same gameplay where I walk through Agroprom for the third time and show you some extremely minor difference, I'm just gonna give you this flyby of the whole level. Look, I'm sorry if these builds are kinda boring, but hey, I told you, that this was gonna be a filler episode, so you can't blame me. Build 1265. Build 1265 is the very first multiplayer build. Yes, multiplayer. And it also has a unique HUD that's not found anywhere else. There is only one map, a small kind of cut down version of Agroprom. The objective of the match is to collect as many artifacts as possible or to kill all the enemies. It has a gameplay that's kinda similar to Counter-Strike, having, buy zones, having an objective in the map, and so on and so forth. This right here is basically the beta of what will later become the Artifact Hunt game mode for the Stalker multiplayer. As you can see, this build begins a little bit differently from the other ones. Instead of just spawning in, we are first greeted with a little leaderboard sort of screen. Later on we spawn in, and during the first few seconds of the match, we are able to pull up the buy menu, just like in Counter-Strike. Now unfortunately I couldn't get this buy menu to work. Like, I can open it, but I can't actually buy any weapons. I can, however, buy ammo for the pistol that I already have, but that's literally it. I can't buy anything else. In here we have this green box, which is actually an artifact container, and the objective of this build, well, the objective of the match, is to collect as many artifacts as possible or to kill the enemy. As you can see, this is just a cut down Agroprom. We saw this earlier, which is understandable. This is just a multiplayer map, and as you can see there in the little mini map, we can locate certain areas that are marked with a purple dot. This is where the artifact is, and if you watch the iceberg video, you already know what this artifact is. It's the Mercury Ball. Look at it. It's the first appearance of the Mercury Ball in Stalker. It will appear in other builds later on, but eventually it will get cut and never show up again. Also, you can see the unique HUD that this build has. It's the only time this HUD shows up. Although, if I'm not mistaken, this HUD shows up in Oblivion Lost Remake as an option. So there's that. When you pick it up, you can drop it by pressing F. In the point of the match, the whole objective here is to bring it back to your base, to the little artifact container, and drop it there. When we get here, it goes inside the box, and you can't pick it back up again. And this was just and this is the beta of what will later become Artifact Hunt. I'll see if I can win, quote unquote, the match by picking up all the artifacts. Also, I wish I could buy the weapons, but unfortunately they don't seem to work. Like, I tried it. They even have a unique weapon to this build, which is the first iteration of the toss shotgun. But again, I couldn't buy it. Maybe it's only on my version. Maybe if you download it, it will work on your PC, but on mine it doesn't. Also, another thing that I have to show you is this. Let me switch to third person real quick. Look at that. It's the duty suit. In fact, one of the first appearances of the duty suit in the entire series. So this build is pretty much one of the first appearances of duty and freedom. I seem to be on the duty team, based, but the other one is most likely freedom. Although obviously I don't have anyone to play with me right now, so I'm just duty. I mean, not like I could anyway. I'm pretty sure the only way this thing works is through like a lamb. So unless I invite the Morlocks from the Discord server to play with me, this is not gonna work. And yes, you can go up these stairs by crouch jumping. It's very annoying and slow though. And I'm also about to run out of time, so... Ah, fuck. Well, sorry I couldn't show you, the time is about to end. And here's the scoreboard again, with the little ping and everything. It's a very basic multiplayer beta, pretty obviously. Only has one level though, so I can't really show you anything new. It's just Agroprom. But this is interesting, it's basically an early version of Artifact Hunt. Oh damn, look at that, it actually worked this time. Okay, so this is the first new weapon of this build, the toss. Primary fire fires one barrel at a time, and it has no secondary fire. You also can't aim it down sights. This is different. In later builds, they changed the toss shotgun so that you can't aim it, but if you press the secondary fire, it fires both barrels at once. So this is unique. The binocular also makes a return. And that's pretty much it for this build. Just a simple multiplayer test. No, you cannot leave the Agroprom complex. If you try, you just get stopped by a invisible wall. Now, onto the next build. 1465. Yes, it's a big leap. But this build, 1465, is the first appearance of the garbage. So I'm very excited to show that to you. Build 1465. This is a 3-level build that was compiled on March 5th, 2003. One of the most interesting features of this build is the new level, the earliest version of the garbage. It also possesses some strange, destructible metal structures and a couple of bots. It also has a much more well-developed physics engine for the vehicles. And here we are, build 1465. Now, I bet you're wondering, S.T.A.L.K.E.R, what are you doing in Agroprom? No, show me the garbage, show me the new thing. I don't want to see Agroprom anymore. I spent the entire episode seeing nothing but Agroprom. But hear me out, there actually is something unique about this one. As you can see, they are testing some kind of destructible structure system on this map. I don't know how to explain it, because all over the map there's these huge metal structures and they can be knocked down. The player can run into them and do this. Again, I don't know exactly what they were testing here, maybe it's the physics engine, but these things are all over the place. We also have the very first bots, although these ones don't do anything. They just stand here. And the weirdest part is that they're you. Like literally, they are copies of the player. If I hit him, I get damaged. Because he's me. As you can see, localhost killed by localhost on the bottom left there. So this bot is me. It's weird, but it's basically just a bunch of copies of the player. And again, a bunch of these metal structures all over the place. Still don't fully know what they were trying to test here. Maybe it's just a physics test. But there's one more thing that I want to show you here, which is the very first anomaly. Now, one thing you gotta keep in mind is that anomalies in this version, in this build, they were much closer to what they were in the movie and in the book. You know, in the Stalker movie and in the Roadside Picnic book. I.e., they aren't visible. They're actually completely invisible. You can't see them. In fact, the only way to know that you're about to hit an anomaly is by listening to the sound of the detector, because the bolt has not been added yet. Here, let me show you the anomaly. It's right on that gate over there. As I approach it, you will see the detector start to beep faster. When it starts beeping like this, that means I'm like 1 foot away from the anomaly, so... And there it is, killed me. That right there is the very first anomaly in Stalker. It seems to be some sort of invisible gravitational anomaly, from what I can tell. And that's it. It has no visuals, it has nothing, it's just empty. And if you fell and if you cross its path, it just kills you instantly. An interesting prototype of what will later become the very iconic anomalies of the Stalker series. Now, with this out of the way, I will go to garbage now and actually show you the new level, because I bet you're sick of seeing Agroprom by now. And here we are. Welcome to the early as fuck garbage. This right here is the first version of the garbage that we can take a look at. Pretty interesting. And I gotta say, this old build, like these old builds in general, they have some phenomenal lighting. Like, I don't know what it is, but they have such good moody lighting. Like, even release Shadow of Chernobyl doesn't have this, you know what I mean? And this right here is the first camp kind of area of the garbage. And I gotta say, this map deserves the name Garbage a lot more than the one on release, because there's so many trash piles all over the place. And in here we have our first trash pile. Now up here there seems to be some kind of weird noise. I don't know if you can hear it. It's like static. I don't know why it's playing this noise here. My theory is that it's some kind of early radiation sound, but I just don't know. Now let's go to that building over there. And in here we have the second building. You can hear the detector going off. See, even though this is a very early garbage, they already started populating the map with anomalies, so we actually have to be careful when exploring here. Okay, I think we're in the clear. And I don't know if you can see this already, but this building right here, it actually made it to release, although in a modified version. Like, you can probably already recognize it if you played enough Stalker. It's that giant abandoned building in the market that will later become the flea market in Clear Sky. That substation over there, it also made it to release, although of course it was in a different position. And here we have a small tunnel that leads back towards that first camp that we already visited. And in here we have the two giant trash piles, so it's the third trash pile in the map, and it's not the last one. When I said this place deserves the name Garbage, I meant it. I'm gonna take a moment here and just give you like a 360 view of this area, just so you can kind of see the environment, the backdrop and everything. Even a skybox looks pretty good in this build, especially for something that was, if I'm not mistaken, made around 2003, 2004. can cut here and we can reach the village. And in here we have a couple of pretty much copy pasted houses. Like, I think these houses are the same model that's used in the early cordon. So they just got plopped down here. Same thing with this thing. If you remember the cordon in the other builds, this is also a part of the cordon. They just took it and slammed it down here. We have a simple house with a fireplace. Not much more to see, just a simple village. And now we have the bridge they used to cut the garbage in half. It leads to two tunnels, and this railway right here, it's actually the same one, if I'm not mistaken, from the cordon. Like, it's the continuation of that railroad. And that tunnel over there would lead to Darkscape, so it would be like the end of the railway would be Darkscape. I'm not gonna walk down into the tunnels because they're just dead ends. They just end. But I will give you a better look at the bridge. Although we do have to be careful. So I'll probably just give you a far away view because there's anomalies over there. This bridge got completely removed in the release. The garbage does not have a bridge anymore. Originally it was supposed to have it, you know, kind of cutting the map in half. But that went the way of the dodo. And there's the fifth or fourth trash pile. Like I said, full of garbage. And now we have the second bridge, which crosses over a small little river that goes all the way to the hangar. We also have to be careful here because there's a bunch of anomalies when you try to cross. And here's underneath the bridge. This river goes a little bit forward and then it stops and it goes all the way to the hangar. And here's the sixth trash pile, and then that's the seventh over there. They really overdid it with the trash piles in this map. Now we are approaching the hangar, which is one of the second aspects of this map that actually managed to survive all the way to release. Like, that hangar over there was only slightly modified for the release. Like, that thing made it to Shadow Chernobyl. Not a lot of assets can brag about that. Most of the stuff in these old builds just got completely scrapped. Although there is one thing about this hangar that got completely scrapped. It never came back, and that's the tunnels. Oh, holy shit, look at that. Physics! Oh my god, physics. Yeah, this is it. Gaming has peaked. We'll never surpass this. Look at this. Physics. But anyway, hangar. So of course it's a little different, but you can already tell, you know, you can already recognize it. Like, if you played any stalker game that features the garbage, this image right here is familiar to you. It's still recognizable. The only thing they really removed was the, again, additional areas, like the tunnels. These tunnels right here, they lead to an area beneath the hangar. Here we have the entrance to the tunnels. They're incredibly dark, and they haven't added the flashlight yet, so we can only guide ourselves using the light in the terrain. You can see it's a bunch of old canals, kind of like a sewer system. And hopefully I can find an exit. Wait, anomalies here. And there we are, back outside. So as you can see, the hangar is pretty much the same from the one we see on release. The only difference that it has tunnels underneath it. And that over there is the original duty checkpoint. That would have been where the player would first meet duty, and it's also the entrance to the raw stock factory, which we'll get to later in some of the builds. There's a lot of builds that feature the raw stock factory, and trust me, let me just tell you this, it is much bigger than the one we got on release. Like, the raw stock factory in the later builds is a genuine factory. It is gigantic, and it's actually based on a real place. And this is it. This is pretty much the entire garbage. That road right there leads to the raw stock factory. But anyways, that's it for this episode. And I'll see you in the next one, where we get to see some more, impressive builds. Like, the next builds have a lot more to show. These ones were very basic. Like I said, this is the filler beach episode. I apologize for that, but not much I could do. Anyways, this has been another episode of Buildo, and I'll see you in the next one.